Hey guys, Russell De La Peña with pushbuttoninvestor.com, and today I'm going to share with you a cool way to know how to evaluate property virtually. I got a question from one of my readers. Thanks so much, guys, for submitting those questions. If you've got questions, by all means, subscribe to this channel. I'm going to answer a lot of people's questions here. Like it, comment. But his name is Bob, and he sent me a question on how to evaluate property virtually. And so I'm going to be answering that question right now. Stay tuned.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Russell, and I wanted to answer a question from a gentleman named Bob who submitted this question. How do you evaluate a property virtually? It's a great question. Thanks so much, Bob, for submitting that question. And I'm going to dive into it here and give you kind of a bird's eye overview on how that's done. And may I just say, it's definitely done in a much easier fashion than I would say the traditional wholesaling. And here's why. So, if we do a comparison of traditional wholesaling versus creative seller financing, traditional wholesaling, you physically must inspect the property. You've got to perform appraisals. You've got to generate competitive market analysis. You've got to get hard money or private money or bank money lined up. And then you've got to find an attorney to draft the paperwork. And so there's, in my opinion, a tremendous amount of hoops to jump through. It's understandable. I mean, it's a big transaction, right? You're dealing with real estate and title of somebody, so I totally get it. That's important to do, and you definitely want to cover yourself by having all this done. And of course, this is just one small part of what needs to be done. But it's also the reason why I 8 years ago decided to get into creative seller financing, and not just the creative seller financing that most people have heard of, but with a little bit of a twist, and that is, the virtual form of doing that, doing it all from home and relying more on systems. So because I did that, the buyers that I work with, more aptly called a tenant buyer, because they're going to be renting the property with the option to buy it, unless you're doing a traditional seller finance where you're doing like a land contract or a contract for deed, that would be a buyer, that would be actual sale. But regardless of who it is, whether it's a tenant buyer trying to do a rent to own, also called a lease option or a lease purchase, or somebody who is buying with seller financing where the seller is the bank, they've got to physically inspect the property, not me. What I'm doing is I'm selling legal rights to the property that I acquire from the seller without putting a dime of my money or credit on the line. Zero. I use promissory notes and that kind of stuff. So I'm literally just using financial education and not putting any dime into the deal. So I don't need to get hard money lenders or private loans or bank loans, that kind of stuff. And I can still generate cash and quite a bit of it. I don't need to do an appraisal because we're not selling the property today, right? The property is going to be sold anywhere from 1 to 3 years from now, unless you're doing a seller finance where it could be years, 10, 20, 30 years. It's being sold up front, but the deed will be transferred at a later time. And, because I don't have to do an appraisal, the property, actually the purchase price that the seller wants, could be 10 to 20% over the market value. So if the house was really worth 100,000 and the seller wanted 110, 120,000, you could do that because he's selling on terms, right? In exchange for not checking the credit of the buyer or the tenant buyer, in exchange for giving the tenant buyer or buyer time to get their ducks in a row and get their financing from a bank and buy the seller out. The seller can sell the property at a premium, 10 to 20% over market value. So I have that flexibility. And I got to say, in the last 8 years, I think I've had one person who actually balked at the purchase price that we were asking. Everybody else is like, cool, I don't have my credit checked, and you're going to give me a couple of years to get my financial ducks in a row. all right, I'll pay a premium. So there was no banks, no bank loans needed for 1 to 3 years. And then what I would just say is this: most people kind of focus on the purchase price, but the reality is the rental price is the key to renting slash selling the property. It's the rental price. So think about it when you go to buy a car. You really care about the purchase price, but you really care about that monthly payment, right? You're really looking at, can I afford the monthly payment? It's going to be $200, $300, $400, $500 a month for this car payment plus insurance. That's what you're kind of focused on. So you care about the purchase price, but you really care about what it's going to cost you every month. Well, at least that is. I mean, maybe you're not. Maybe you're like, no, Russ. Hey, I would be all about paying the checking out the purchase price. My wife and I, we pay cash, so that's important to us. But if you're financing it, that's the monthly is going to be important to you. So for your tenant buyer or your buyer, what they're paying monthly is what they focus on. And in fact, when you're marketing like on sites like on Craigslist or Zillow or wherever, where you can definitely get your property sold with free leads, by the way, your rental price is very sensitive. If you just go $1 outside of the range that you're trying to sell the property on, you can miss a ton of buyers. If the property that you're trying to sell and like properties are $1,000 a month that they're worth, and you put 1,001, you might miss people that would have been searching and doing the ranges. You put like 1,000 or like 900 to 1,000. Might be the range on Craigslist, something like that. If you put $1 more, you're out of that range, and you're probably might not be seen. So anyway, the rental price, I would say, is the key. And because I've got so much flexibility, I don't have to jump through as many hoops as I do in traditional wholesaling. And this allows me to do something which I personally love. See, I'm ambitiously lazy, right? I'm ambitious, but I'm lazy. And what I like to do is automate as much as I possibly can, right? I don't know about you, but for years I would have to talk to buyers and sellers and spend hours on the phone and explain. They'd say, "What's a rent to own? How does that work?" And I'm like, "Okay, we're gonna spend a half hour to an hour with me explaining what a rent to own is," only for them to never call me back. And I just saw that half hour to an hour of my life disappear that I never could get back, right? And so, maybe you can relate. And so that's why I automate that process now, where I'm explaining stuff that I have to explain normally all the time. Well, why not automate that, right? And so I use sales funnels. I build sales funnels manually myself. I custom build them. I do what Russell Brunson of ClickFunnels calls funnel hacking. So I look at some of the best funnels there are on the planet, and then I model after them. I don't copy them. I don't plagiarize them, but I definitely model after them. And then I automate the stuff that people are normally asking me on a regular basis. So in this case, what I actually do is I write out a series of emails that are timed to go out every 7 days. And it tells the seller, look, your property is still sitting because it's overpriced and it's probably the rental price. Let's reevaluate. And that's automatically sent out. Now, if we sell the property, I just stop them from getting those emails. But if we don't, I don't got to call the seller and be like, hey, we got to lower your price, whatever. All I do is have my automated emails go out to all my sellers, and it says, hey, it's been 7 days. Property hasn't sold. Here's why. And so they open the email, and it's like, usually it's the rental price. It's not the purchase price, although it could be if they're asking some astronomical, insane price, which you shouldn't do a deal with them in the first place. I'm just assuming you're not going to work with those people if they do that. And usually that sparks up a conversation where we get on the phone and they're like, or just even via text or email, they're open to lowering their price, which is awesome, right? Because my automated systems do that. I also have a strategy of getting property volume. I just know that there's going to be some sellers, since we're telling them that we're going to give them the full asking price, that they're going to be like, cool, I'm going to let this idiot out of California sell my property for some astronomical price, which they're really the idiot, right? Because it's not going to sell. But I recognize that some people are going to just be, some sellers are just not going to be on planet Earth, right? They're going to be out to lunch. with their own ideas on what their property is worth. And so because I don't have to really put too much effort into this stuff, because I can work a few hours, literally 2 hours, and make 5 grand, 10 grand on a deal, I'm able to get property volume. And that allows me to cut ties with the seller if what they're doing doesn't make sense or not. I'm also able to lock up properties with a one-page lease option memo that I originally got from a guy named Joe Crump. And it's a one-page form. It's pretty non-threatening. You obviously got to buy his course and all that kind of stuff, but it's a one-page form. It allows you to lock up a property with the seller having really no risk, and it allows you to do it with no risk either, so you don't put any money into it. Yes, if you're asking yourself right now, won't people burn you if you're doing this this way? Yeah, 1 out of 10 will burn me. But if you're making, crazy money on 9 other properties, who cares, right? I mean, give me a break. Produce sections, when you go to your local grocery store and, your produce section, the produce manager doesn't go, he doesn't fall apart and go, oh man, some of our produce, 10% of it spoiled, right? He expects that. He already knows that. It's already calculated, right? The grocery store knows that. The owner does. And so they're cool with that. And so I look at it the same way. Again, I'm putting so little time and effort into it, and the upside is 3 to 25 grand a deal without working very hard. Again, ambitiously lazy. That allows me to do that. So hopefully that helps. Some real quick ways that you can evaluate seller financing deals are some of these sites. Some of you are already familiar with them, but if you're not, Zilpy.com is a way that you can quickly and easily just plug in the address and what the seller wants in rent and see if they're in the ballpark or not. Same thing with Rental Meter. These are free sites, Zillow, Trulia, and there's a ton more. Again, what really matters is what the market will yield. So Zilpy and Rental Meter and Zillow, some of you are right now going, oh, those aren't accurate and this and that. That's great. We're doing rent to own. We're doing seller options, seller financing. So we have the flexibility. I'm not looking for precision with these tools. I'm looking to see if my seller is relatively within the 10 to 20% mark, right? I'm trying to see if they're in the ballpark. I'm also trying to see, primarily with Rental Meter and Zilpy, I'm trying to see if the rental price is on point. If they're asking for too much, and here's a tip, here's a bonus tip. If you get a seller who's like, yeah, well, I heard that I'm supposed to raise the rental price up by $100 or $200, and that's going to apply towards the purchase. Don't do it. I just been saying that the rental price is the key. So if you're $100 or $200 over, you're going to lose this deal. The house is going to sit. I can't tell you how many times I've had a seller do that without telling me. And then, because I'm not in their state, I don't know their specific market and what a property is going to go for exactly. And, depends, of course, on what they've done and updates and everything. And once I realized that was what they were doing, I told them to lower their price by $100 or $200. And guess what? All kinds of tenant buyers start coming out of the woodwork. The house gets sold. So the market will yield its true price. You can go online and do as much research as you want. But there's a reason why realtors a lot of times, we love you guys. I used to be a realtor, but if you're doing competitive market analysis and you're trying to appease your seller and the house is not selling, there's only one reason. That one reason is the price. You've got to lower the price. In that case, it's the purchase price. In this case, it's going to be the rental price when you're doing seller financing, like rent to own, specifically. So I hope this helps, guys, in answering your questions. Bob, thanks so much for the question. I appreciate that. Guys, feel free to submit questions. Let me know if you've got questions. I'm happy to create these quick videos to, I hope it was quick. I don't know how long this was, but I want to create an informative video that you can take into the field and move your business forward. So I hope you've enjoyed this, guys. Thanks so much.